Hello, welcome to the live. So today we'll be on BIPOC mental health books. July is BIPOC Mental Health Month, so I will be going over these plus an ebook. So I'm going to recommend that click the little bookmark or the little ... save option, because I know usually what I do is I go through each one briefly and then I go through them in more depth, but I got so many books here that I'm not going to do that this time. So if you're watching this on the replay, or maybe if you want to watch this later, definitely save it so that you can see the description of all the books below, which I'm going to put in the description. So it'll be the title and then like the brief description if you just kind of want to know what I'm going to be talking about today. And then if you're watching it on the replay, you can just kind of do the scroll, fast forward to what you want to see. Sorry, my voice is going in and out. Major allergies. So I have a lot of books, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. And for this one, I wanted to get a good range. So I have adult, but I also have middle grade and children's. Before I get into the books, I want to kind of go over mental health versus mental illness. I know for July, for BIPOC Mental Health Month, it's a good opportunity to talk about how mental health or mental illness has, affected the BIPOC community. So usually I think what I see a lot of times is people kind of lump them together, like mental health and mental illness as being the same, but they're actually quite different. So mental health, everyone has a different level of mental health or some sort of level of mental health. Mental health would be how fulfilled someone feels with their life or different areas of their life, as well as how they got through challenges or changes. So mental health is something that everyone has a certain level of, as opposed to mental illness, which are the like depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, post-traumatic disorder, obsessive compulsive, all those things, all those diagnoses. Not everyone will have a mental illness, okay? But everyone will have some level of mental health. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, ask me a question in the comment and I'll clarify. So the books that I'm going to go over have to do with mental health. I know on my podcast and then sometimes on these lives and, on my social media, I talk a lot about mental illness because I am a therapist and that is half of what the podcast is about. But the other half is actually more general mental health. So these books that I'm going to go over are talking about just that, mental health. So I'm going to start with adult, and then I'm going to go to middle YA, and then middle grade, and then children's. So the first book, I'm actually currently reading, and it's an ebook. It's a memoir, and I'll show you the cover. If it'll load here. Okay. Come on. Oops. Here we go. Black Widow. Okay. By Leslie Gray Streeter. So this book is about grief and loss. This is Leslie's experience with losing her spouse, her husband. And I'm like a quarter of the way through this. So I know what I can say is not a spoiler since I'm not that far in. But essentially with this book, what happens is Leslie's husband dies while they're kissing. Essentially the kid was taking a nap or put to sleep or something. And then her and her husband were like, hey, want to make out? So they start making out and then he dies while they're kissing, which is so traumatic. So this was her experience with being jolted with that. Other themes that this book includes is being a foster parent. The child that they had, I think, was foster. It was like foster to adopt. So they were hoping to adopt. And then also being in an interracial marriage. So she is Black and I believe Christian, and he was Caucasian and Jewish. So she talks about some of the stuff that went on with that, and how they met and everything, which was very heartwarming. And so far, I'm liking this book. So I do recommend it. So this is Black Widow by Leslie Gray Streeter. Okay. Sorry for the glare. The other one is, this is also a memoir. FYI, a lot of these, I have like half of these are memoirs. This one is Notes on Grief. This is a new release, actually, by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, right? So she's written a lot of books, but this is her memoir about like a specific period, which is recent. And that was the death of her father during the pandemic. And this is something, I think is super, super relevant for a lot of people, not just the death realm with the pandemic, but living in a different location. So she and her father were living in different countries. So when he had died suddenly, didn't have to do with coronavirus. He died suddenly. It really complicated the grief because she couldn't go to see him. She couldn't fly in a plane to go see him because of the travel restrictions. And then it also complicated her grief process. And then within her culture, the grief ritual. So having to like see it via Zoom or, via video. So I read this. It was really, really good. As you can see, it's really short. It's very raw. And it pretty much, she's talking about like all the thoughts that were going through her mind during the whole process. So I think this is super, super relatable for a lot of people. So I highly recommend this. As you can see, I got this from my local public library. I probably will end up actually purchasing a copy of my own, as well as reading some of her other books. So that is Notes on Grief. The next one is a guest I had on the podcast. If you want to listen to her, we recorded this episode January. So January of 2020. And it was with Cynthia Lim, talking about her book, Wherever You Are, a memoir of love, marriage, and brain injury. So Cynthia Lim, actually, she had worked in education, and her husband experienced a traumatic, like a brain injury while they were on vacation in another state. I mean, so the stress of that, she talks about through this whole book what that was like for her, as well as what it was like to become the caregiver for her spouse, which isn't talked about a lot. I initially found this book and read it because of Caregiver Awareness Month last year. And a lot of the books out there, which I think are helpful and important, mainly talk about like an aging parent or like older adult, but not when it's like sudden and when it's someone who's like your spouse. So this was a really, really good book. She was on the podcast and she talks a little more in depth about, what her experience was. So I not only recommend you checking out the book if you want to know more about spousal caregiving, but also to listen to our podcast episode on booksbetweensessions.com or Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because it was a pleasure having her on, and she talks about what it was like. So very, very important. The next one is a new release, and that is Trejo. My Life of Crime, Redemption, and Hollywood by Danny Trejo with Donal Logue. So this just came out, and I had this on my TBR as soon as I heard it was coming out, because I'm a fan of his acting work, but I didn't actually know so much about his personal life. And so this talks about just that, how he grew up in an abusive household, around a lot of drugs, a crime, like gang life. So he talks about what his experience was like with that, his addiction with substances, actually being in jail, like the major high security prisons in California, and then ultimately what led to him becoming an actor. I read this in like 2 days because it was a page turner. I mean, his life, he's really, really, really been through a lot. I think after reading his book, I'm even more of a fan of him now, knowing a little more of the backstory. So I highly recommend this, and I think you will definitely be intrigued and learn a lot. I think he could definitely be in many ways like a role model to many youth. So that is Trejo by Danny Trejo and Donal Logue. He's also an actor. They were friends. He was on Gotham. He was on a little bit of Sons of Anarchy. He's been in a lot of stuff, and he's an amazing actor. And he also had an interesting connection too with Danny, which you'll have to read about in the book, and how they met like years before they were actors. The next one, also a memoir, is Mixed Plate by Joe Coy. Mixed Plate, Chronicles of an All-American Combo. So if you're a fan of comedy, you've heard of Joe Coy. I actually listened to the audiobook, and then after I finished listening to the audiobook, I went and purchased the hard copy. I would actually recommend, like, if you can, if it's through like your public library or one of the audiobook apps out there, listen to the audiobook, because he's the reader. He's the reader. So when it comes to him describing, like, and if you've seen his stand-up, like his mom, he does like all the impressions. So listening to the audiobook is definitely an experience. I would highly recommend it. I mean, definitely read the book, but if you can, see if you can get your hands on the audiobook. So this one, he goes through and talks about his life experience and things that he couldn't or he hadn't really shared on his stand-up comedy, which was essentially what it was like coming here from the Philippines, being biracial, being half Caucasian, half Filipino, what it was like growing up, and a lot of his family dynamics, not just like with his mom, but actually also with his sibling, who he never really talked about, one of his brothers who is actually living with schizophrenia. So he talks about that, and then his start in the comedy world, and how he met like a lot of the big name fellow comedians as he was paving his way towards being a comedian. So this book was really, really good. The audiobook was even better. So if you want to know more about him, or just what it's like to grow up being bicultural, having mental illness in the family, struggling with parents, and all of that, I definitely recommend this book. So that is Mixed Plate by Joe Coy. The next one, also an audiobook, a memoir, Hola Papi by John Paul Brammer. Hola Papi, How to Come Out in a Walmart Parking Lot and Other Life Lessons. This is probably going to be one of my favorite book covers for the year. This was really, really interesting. If you're a bookstagrammer, booktuber, book anything, you've definitely seen this cover. It's a short read. I finished it in a few days. And essentially what this talks about is his experience pretty much being like the Chicano Carrie Bradshaw, where he was responding to people's questions from like an advice column. People who were gay, people who were straight, everything in between. And he responds to their questions with advice, but also weaving in some of his personal experiences and situations that he had been through. So for each question, and these are all the questions, he then talks about a little snippet of something he experienced and then gives them advice. Really like this book. I thought it was really interesting, at times really funny. So I definitely highly recommend this. The next one, sort of a memoir, sort of not, but it's definitely nonfiction. So I haven't started this yet. I checked this out, and this is something that I will be reading for this month, and that's The Undocumented Americans by Karla, Cornejo, Villavicencio. Hey, I think I got that right. Sorry for the glare. So this is a nonfiction, and this talks about her experience partly as being one of the first undocumented immigrants to graduate Harvard. And then she gets into talking about the stories of other undocumented individuals, undocumented immigrants in this country, and pretty much what they had experienced. And from Miami, Flint, Michigan, Connecticut, and then also how some undocumented workers were recruited to clean up ground zero after 9/11. So this is a very real and raw description of the lives of individuals. It says, combine sensitive reporting and powerful personal narratives to bring to light remarkable stories of resilience, madness, and death. Through these stories, we come to understand what it truly means to be a stray, an expendable, a hero, an American. So this has actually been on my TBR for a while as well. And I'm bringing this up because a lot of things, as I said before, a lot of things bring up mental health, right? Many things that can impact someone's mental health, including politics, right? Or being undocumented, like that's gonna have an effect. So this definitely fits with the mental health component. So excited to read this. The next one, I am a quarter of the way through, like a third of the way through. This is a YA book. It's If I Tell You the Truth. It's kind of blocked out by the label. If I Tell You the Truth by Jasmin Kaur. So, this one, it's interesting. So it's told as a story, but then also has bits of like poetry and verse. I had to take a few breaks as I was reading this, because it's good, but there's trigger warnings. So let me tell you what they are. So this book has trigger warnings for sexual assault, police brutality, immigrant trauma, victim blaming. That's what got me. Domestic violence, alcoholism, depression, anxiety. So essentially, this is the story of a young woman who, let me make sure I don't do a spoiler here, who became pregnant after a sexual assault and then ends up leaving India to be an immigrant in Canada, and then her experience with that. And man, like, so I'm still reading this, but the victim blaming in this, have you ever read a book where you're like, it pulls a lot of emotions out of you and you get like really angry and upset for the character? That's what was happening in here. So heartbreaking. This is a very, very important topic because this is real. I mean, it's fiction, but like realistic fiction, right? Because this really, really happens. So this book is good. Like so far, it's a hard topic, but like sometimes like hard topics are important to have. Like it's important to have these books that pull that because it's real. So definitely recommend that, but I definitely, keep an eye out for the trigger warnings. So that's If I Tell You the Truth by Jasmin Kaur. The next one is middle grade? I believe middle grade. I haven't started this yet. So this is actually a twofer. So this will fit for BIPOC mental health as well as Disability Pride Month, which is also this month. And there was also a Disability Visibility Day. I think it was like the second week of July. So this has also been on my TBR for a while, and it's Show Me a Sign by Clare Lezotte. Cool cover. So this is actually written by an author who is deaf, and this is like historical fiction. So it pretty much is, I believe, based off of the real deaf community in Martha's Vineyard. And what that was like. So this one talks about that, as well as the land disputes between English setters and the native community Wampanoag people, right? So this hits multiple things, actually, even native. So that's great. So this, I've seen a lot on the internet for recommendations for many different categories. So I'm excited to read that. That is Show Me a Sign. I love the cover. The next one is a children's. I believe this is for like 8 to 12-year-olds. I read this. And JD and the Great Barber Battle by J. Dillard. Look how cute. So this is a short one, but like I said, it's it's children's 8 to 12. And essentially what this is about is JD, who ends up getting like his haircut. His hair ends up being not what he would like it to look like because the mom cut his hair. So he felt like really embarrassed going to school, got teased for it. So this pretty much talks about what happens when you take a difficult circumstance and you flip it and you turn it into something positive and you try to make the most out of it. So this is a really cute story. It says, the night before the start of 3rd grade, his mom had just given him his first and worst home haircut. He gets insulted at school, so he decides to take matters into his own hands and ends up cutting his own hair, ends up finding out that he's really good at using the clippers, and makes a name for himself as being like a kid who's really good at cutting hair and being a hairstylist and a hair cutter. So this was a really cute book. I really liked it. So I definitely recommend that. So that's JD. It says JD and the Great Barber Battle by J. Dillard. The next two are children's books. So the first one is What Do You Do with a Chance, written by Kobi Yamada, illustrated by May Besom. So this is one of you. If you read kids books, you know about kids books. You've probably seen some of his other books, which are there's like what do you do with a problem? What do you do with an idea? And this one's What Do You Do with a Chance? Really cute. This is for like 5 to 8-year-olds. The illustrations are really cool. And essentially, I'll read what it says. It says, what do you do with a chance, especially one that seems too big or too wild or just out of reach? Do you hold back? Do you act like you don't care? Do you let it slip away? This is the story of some remarkable chances and the child who doesn't know quite what to do with them. But the more chances come around, the more the child's fascination grows. And then one day, a little courage makes all the difference in the world. This is a story for anyone at any age who has ever wanted something, but was afraid of risking too much to get it. It's a story to inspire you to embrace the chances that come into your life, because you never know when a chance, once taken, might be the one to change everything. So, love that. And this book is really good. So, highly recommend this, especially if you're a parent or caregiver, or you work with kids, or you know a kid that would like a nice bedtime story. That's this one. The next one is After the Fall, How Humpty Dumpty Got Back Up Again by Dan Santat. So we all know the Humpty Dumpty story. and how he was just left in pieces. So this is the after story and what happened after. And essentially, I'll read what it says. It says, "My name is Humpty Dumpty. I'm famous for falling off a wall. You may have heard about it, but that's only half the story because I decided to get back up. And when I did, something amazing happened. This is the story about my life after the fall. Inspiring and unforgettable, this epilogue to the beloved classic nursery rhyme will encourage even the most afraid to overcome their fears, learn to get back up, and reach new heights." So the illustrations in this are really cool. They're really good. And see if I can, oh yeah, here. So here he is coming out of the hospital, like after the fall. And then there was one, if you're a therapist watching this, you'll get it too. Says, he became afraid of heights, kept him from his favorite things. So I feel like I experienced this in the grocery store because I'm short, but everything he wants to reach is like at the top. And then, where's the other one? Starts climbing the wall. So there's a lot of symbolism, symbolic stuff that essentially talk about getting over and overcoming your fears. So this was a really good book. I'll probably purchase one. This was the library's copy. Okay, so that is After the Fall. And there's one I just realized I didn't have here, as if I need a larger stack. This one. I didn't include that. This one, Wishes, by Muon T. Van, illustrations by Victor Ngai. If you see my reels, you've probably seen this mentioned a lot. And so this is the story of through the child's eyes, being an immigrant and leaving the home country. And so everything within this is like talking about wishes. If you had to leave everything behind and travel by boat across rocky waters to find safe harbor, what would you wish for? In the middle of the night, a family quickly packs up what they carry and leaves their entire world, traveling to a new and unknown place. The voyage is perilous, but the heart's wishes prevail in this emotional journey of resilience, belonging, and of hope. So there's this one. The clock wished it was slower. So this is, saying goodbye because, being an immigrant refugee, not like everyone comes over. So they have to, sometimes they're saying goodbye to family members and they don't know when they're going to see them again. So this book was amazing. And this is real. I'm in Orange County, where I grew up near a city where there are a lot of immigrants, refugees from Vietnam. So I think this is something that is definitely relatable for a lot of kids. And also, even if you want to, like you're first, second generation, you have kids, like wanting to, explain it, kind of to a child. I think this is actually a really age appropriate, developmentally appropriate way to do so. So that is Wishes. Okay, so these are the books. If you hopped on here late, as I said, these will be listed below, and definitely save or, bookmark this so that you can watch it later if you want. Let's see if I don't drop this. Oh my gosh. Okay. So these plus an ebook. So hopefully this was informative or helpful, and maybe you found your next book or books that you would like to read for BIPOC Mental Health Month. This was really hard for me to put together. I was trying not to turn this into a bookshelf tour, but I still ended up with a large stack. So, what else? Oh, the next podcast episode will be a special one. I have a surprise for you guys. I'm like, how this podcast episode will be. So I did a vote last week about what you would like as a solo episode. And it was pretty much a vote between like BIPOC mental health books or my mid-year book favorites. And 80% of you voted for mid-year book favorites. So I will be doing a podcast episode on that, which I will be recording, and it will go out before the end of this month. But definitely, if you haven't already, definitely follow me on Instagram so that you can see when it comes up, and also how I'm going to do this one, since it'll be a little different in the method compared to all the other podcasts. So there's that, and then as well as the 31st of this month, which will be my July reading wrap-up. So thanks so much for watching, and hopefully you have a good rest of the week.